maybe we could actually talk about this a little bit more because
all roads lead to the Truck Yeah podcast.
Yeah, so-
exactly.
So really, Truck Yeah's podcast today is Jesse and Jamie having a therapy session.
Yeah, right.
I have a group of moms and we all agreed no cell phones for our kids until 14.
We say freight never stops, which is true, but that doesn't mean that there can't be guardrails.
There's a responsibility in any time you're a company and you're impacting the lives of your employees.
Calling all CPG shippers, truckers, and logistics pros. Welcome to the Truck Yeah podcast, your ultimate cheat code for smarter shipping, smoother logistics, and dominating the shelf where it matters most. Buckle up. It's time to learn, laugh, and get your freight on.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another edition of the Zipline Logistics Truck Yeah podcast. My name is Jesse Jewett. Joined with me, as always, Teddy Lee Knox. Hello, Teddy.
Hello, how are you?
I'm wonderful. We've got a special episode, a special guest today. We're taking it back to our first episode regarding mental health in the supply chain and in CPG world. So joining us today, Jamie Rogerson, the Director of Outbound Logistics and North American Operations for Lululemon, located here in Columbus, Ohio. Good afternoon, Jamie.
Good afternoon, Jesse and Teddy. You guys have good radio voices, and I don't. So,
That's not true. You sound
so if
lovely.
there's anything you can do to that and make it sound better, I would appreciate it.
We'll work on that in post. Thank you for joining us. We're excited to talk to you about an important topic, but tell us a little bit about your history in the world of logistics, if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely. So it seems like as soon as I left college, I was thrust into logistics. My first job was with RPS Ground, which was, RPS, which then turned into FedEx Ground. So I was with FedEx for about 5.5 years. I moved to Columbus to take a job with L Brands and was with L Brands for 16 years.
Wow.
And while at L Brands, I did roles in DC operations, shipping operations, DC, pick, pack, and ship, international transportation, domestic transportation. So in those 16 years, I felt like I got, kind of like logistics school.
View of everything, yeah.
After those 16 years, I moved on to Lululemon and have been with Lululemon for 10 years, all in outbound logistics operations.
Very cool.
Auto logistics.
Absolutely. I like that transition from it was this company and now it's FedEx. You hear that a lot in the logistics space. So when talking about mental health, and we're going to kind of discuss how we as supply chain professionals can impact mental health in our work, our homes, and our community. You have a very important story to tell. So why don't you kind of walk us through that? Part of it is your organization, Thrive for Theron. Walk us through that story if you don't mind.
So thanks for having me and thanks for talking about mental health. I think it's super important. And like Teddy mentioned before we started recording, your first podcast dealt with mental health. So yeah, I'm proud to be and honored to be invited as a guest. May 13th, 2022, my youngest son, Theron, who was 19 at the time, took his life. He died by suicide. And that night, I was just sitting there with my wife. We were crying, could barely breathe. And some days, even yet today, I can barely breathe. But we decided in that moment that we weren't going to let Theron's memory be tied to that day. And that we wanted to use his beautiful soul and his light to shine on mental health, suicide prevention, help make our community and our youth and our community stronger, and using Theron's memory. So the initial thought was, let's have a scholarship in Theron's name.
Yeah.
So that was step one. And then I started, doing tons of research into mental health and what other families who have lost suicide have done in the aftermath, and kind of use their young people's memories to do something else. And so I had big ideas at first. I wanted to kind of boil the ocean, and my wife kind of reined me in, and so we formed Thrive for Theron. It's our 501c3. It supports the scholarship, but we also do things in the community. Theron went to Mount Vernon Nazarene University for his freshman year of college. And so we go there, we support the cross country and track team and do a workout in his honor. We have just recently started collaborating with another nonprofit in Granville Center for the Arts, and a local counselor, Mark Hamilton of Focus Point Counseling. And we've been doing something called Brave Talks. So we invite parents to come in and try to coach them, give them a tool belt to talk to their kids about anxiety, isolation, suicide, ideation, anything along the mental health spectrum. And those talks have been going very well. And so Thrive for Theron is basically an outreach program in honor of Theron, trying to shine the light on mental health and what we can do to make our community stronger.
That's awesome. I mean, kind of reflecting on it, it sounds like it's tackling both, obviously, children and the parents, right? As I know, Teddy and we've talked about it several times. I have 2 daughters. Teddy has 3, and they're 9 and 5. So, I mean, it's one of those things where you hope that it's not on any of their minds, but it's probably ironically, or whatever you want to call it, my oldest daughter had a quote unquote mental health day yesterday from school. She called us early. She said I was sick, and we picked her up and brought her home. And it took a while for us to get that to her, but kind of reflecting on where I want to be as a parent and saying, I acknowledged to her this morning, it's like, hey, I know you told me that you were sick yesterday, and then you told mom later that it was a different sick, right? That's okay. It's important that you feel like you can tell that to us. So to hear that you're kind of tackling it from both sides, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is at least that makes me feel good.
That's exactly what we're doing.
There's a lot of resources that we need. I mean,
and our kids, today, kids are growing up in, arguably the most connected world we've ever had, right? And yet isolation is at the highest level. The feeling of isolation is at the highest level that's been recorded. So it's very strange, but getting on a phone or an iPad or tablet or whatever and scrolling, the doom scrolling it further isolates people, and kids are doing this at a young age.
Yeah.
And their brains they're not able to handle that kind of feeling, right? So the last part of the brain that develops in a child is the prefrontal cortex, and that's usually 26, 27 years old, and that's the part of the brain that is executive functioning type of work. So it's handling anxiety, making good decisions, and that's the last thing that develops. So we have to. I told this story of my wife and we have 3 boys. So our oldest is 8 years older than Theron was. Our middle son was 6 years older. So when Theron was 19 and our other 2 were adults, we're thinking, hey, we get this stuff figured out. We got life figured out. And then this came out of nowhere. Theron he never showed any type of mental health issues. He was never diagnosed. We've talked to his family doctor, who was the only doctor he ever saw, and his doctor said he didn't see anything coming. So a little bit more about, Theron's background and what, obviously I was shocked. The community was shocked. I think most people think suicide ideation are all these, dark and gloomy souls, right? And that's what I've found through talking to other people who have lost kids to suicide is they're like, they fill a room. They bring the room up. They are bright souls. They want people to laugh. They're not always the life of the party, but they open, they walk into a room and the room becomes brighter. And so you have to watch out for all the kids, right? It's not just the ones who seem, like Eeyore.
Right.
It's we need to protect all of our kids, and they're exposed to, the dangers of the world pretty quickly, and they can't handle it. And that's why we're talking to parents with the Brave Talks. We have to look at how we're raising our kids and maybe change some things, because the rate of suicide is increasing each year. So we're going to lose over 50,000 souls to suicide this year. It's unbelievable.
That's a lot. That's bizarre to think about. But I love with the cadence that you have of the education piece of getting that out there. And something I always say on this floor that I get made fun of here and at home for is, like, you have to say something 6 to 7 times to someone for them to fully understand it. To the point where my kids were like, "You only said it 4 times, so I didn't hear it." But you have to put that stuff in there so they understand. Like, there's so much that I mean, growing up as like a, an 80s baby and 90s kid, like when I see a lot of social media, I can't actually handle it. Like it's a lot of information and I'm getting the wrong things 6 and 7 times and getting the wrong practice with it. So having somewhere where you're seeing something and then actually have the chance to voice it back, like that's true education. To hear it and then apply it is completely different. And that's not what, I mean, to your point, this connected society, that's not what we have. It is one sided and it's everything coming in of like, you need this, you need that. As I grow, like there's different things that I'm told I need to be taking creatine and colostrum or so. I don't know what these are. And I don't know if I need to buy them, but
You
that's the,
supplement every week.
yeah, yes, to the point where I'm like, do I need to do this? Like, how do I figure it out? All of it, no matter what part of life it is, or whether it's like social life, family life, work life, everything, like it's not, you don't just get it and it changes
Mhm.
quickly. So I think, being able to have that center, someone that you can go back and understand things with and have a brave space. I like that you call it brave talks instead of, like safe talks because it's you need to be brave to have those conversations and open your mind that way. And I think that's really important and it needs to be applied everywhere.
Yeah. No, I think, we talk about brave talks and, we're sitting here looking at each other, right? And if I would bring up like a really awkward topic, it would be hard just to be staring at in your eyes as talking about it. And the counselor who puts on the brave talks with us is, he's good at like bringing up the ways that he does those things. It's like say the hard things while you're doing things
Mm.
in so many words. So it's, your kids, maybe you're coloring or you're drawing or you're cooking or you're out playing basketball. Those are probably good times to bring up something that maybe would feel awkward because it's going to be rare that they bring it up. We're adults. It's really hard to think of the way that our brains worked back when we were 9, 10, 11 years old. And luckily, we've forgotten how we think because it would be disastrous to have adults thinking like that. But you, as an adult parent, have to be the one to break the ice, and it's not going to work the first time, probably. So it's a muscle. Like what I used to say to my family was, I would worry about the small stuff, and maybe I'd lose my temper on small stuff, but the bigger the problem, the more calm I'm going to be. And it obviously it didn't work for me and Theron, and I have a million regrets. I relive my past conversations with Theron every day. There's not a day that goes by that where I'm not like sick to my stomach about failing him. And that's what pushes me to have conversations with others. And I beg people to use me as an example to then have a rough conversation with their children. So, maybe all it takes is one conversation. You never know. And you have the kid who, instead of taking a step down the path of darkness, they're taking a step into the light and they continue on that way. And, so, I pray that I can make a difference.
Well, thank you for sharing that about the start of the organization. I guess before we get down too far, I did have a question about like recent impacts of AI. Has that been a I don't know. Has that been a topic in some of the brave talks? I mean, amongst a number of other things that are happening. But you talked about isolation. You talked about technology. I mean, it seems to be moving faster and faster, and we can actually have a quote unquote relationship with an artificial being. And I know I've read a handful of articles that are very troubling.
It's terrifying.
Mhm.
And we haven't broached that subject precisely, but
Yeah.
it's kind of like on the surface. It's more about we're sitting here talking to each other. We can read each other's body language, facial expressions,
Right.
and there's a potential for the human contact, a hug or whatever, a high five, and you just can't get that through the phone, through AI,
Right.
through any other form than just human interaction. And so we definitely stress the fact that get out and move. People say touch grass, whatever, but get out and be in nature, do things together in nature. So yeah, we've kind of like on the surface talked about AI a little bit, but not as deep as we should. It's like,
Yeah.
it, it could be used as a great tool, and that's what we hope for. But it's no different than the internet. The internet and social media can be fantastic and are fantastic a lot. But the exposure our kids get to, whether it's pornography or just crazy dark stuff, it's there too. So, you know, we as parents have to find a way to, either lock that down, take control of our house. And I think, my wife and I've talked about this. We should have never let the phone go into the bedroom at night, right?
Yeah.
Well, using it as an alarm clock. Well, we can get an alarm clock.
Right. Right.
So there are things that we would have done differently, and social media and exposure to the internet through the phones is probably something we would have locked down a lot tighter.
Yeah.
And, I would suggest to anyone with young kids to keep it out of the bedroom, almost treat it like it's poison.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
There's a lot of studies that came out like years after certain ages of kids had access to phones because social media, AI, everything is moving so fast. And it's, you know what you know. And if you have hunches and then you voice them and you're kind of shut down or told like, oh, that's so silly, don't worry about it. It like takes you back a little bit. And I think that that's a really important piece of it too, is that you need to make sure that you're building that, like that community and that network. Like I have a group of moms and we all agreed no cell phones for our kids until 14. Like we all like made a pact. Like these 10 kids will be the only ones in school without a cell phone, and we're going to stand strong together because we're going to feel bad.
That's awesome.
But it's also tough because then my daughter's made fun of because she doesn't have
Yeah.
She doesn't have a cell phone. She doesn't have an Apple Watch. It's just everything is like I'm the worst mom ever. And I have to keep reminding myself that means I'm doing a good job. Like they're not supposed to like me. But, like I'm told that when they're 30 they will. So I'm hoping that era.
It's funny you hear, I mean, it is, you talk about like creatine and all these, the paleo diet and things like that. It's like, hey, maybe we should focus on the stuff that sunlight, nature, the stuff that's worked for 2,000 years. What a concept. Like it's not the phone that's been around here for 20.
Yeah, instead of the dopamine rush of scrolling, and I think we live in logistics, so the dopamine rush of ordering something today and getting it tomorrow. That's it's contagious, it's dangerous, it's we live in it and we foster it to some extent, with the truckloads we're moving or with the packages we're having delivered.
The emails that we're responding to late at night. Yeah. It's
it used to be bad before. I would say like the work-life balance was bad before COVID, but during and after COVID, it is like exponentially grown to the point where I think companies are trying to bring people back into the office. But I think people are looking at that as like, well, I get up in the morning, I check my email, and then I have to drive in, and then when the day's done in the office, I drive back home, and then I'm checking email, I'm responding. It's like you never feel like you're really down. And I think that's a place that we have to figure out as companies and how we support mental health as corporations and as brands to, almost like you have to lock down yourself and say, at this time, I'm putting it down and I'm not going to pick it up till tomorrow morning.
Yeah. I mean, that's a really good transition. So let's kind of expand on that. I was just thinking of, that element of setting aside time, or whether it's the reality of the supply chain, right? It is, we say freight never stops, unfortunately.
Trucking never sleeps.
Which is true, right? But that doesn't mean that there can't be guardrails or parameters. And that may be something as simple as what we do here is a rotation of, hey, this is the week, or, you're not going to do it every week or every day, but maybe this is the day or week or whatever that we spread it out. Maybe you get a Friday off or something if you handle the phones after hours for X amount of times. In your career in logistics, or maybe what you're doing right now, or even with brands, like how do you think about their responsibility when it comes to mental health for both their employees and their consumers, right?
Yeah, I definitely I think there's a responsibility, anytime you're, a company and you're impacting the lives of your employees and customers or guests, whatever you want to call them. I think ultimately creating a framework to work within that gives, the individual managers agency on making decisions. And, you know, if a manager has an associate that comes to them with a mental health problem, being able to have tools within the company to help them, but also being able to, have the ability to say, hey, if you need a day off, then take a day off. And I think it's hard to manage people in companies when you don't have clear, concise guardrails.
Hmm.
But, life is not that simple that we always fit within the guardrails. And sometimes you need to be a human and treat people as humans and you know, give them what they need in that moment. And that's going to change for, most situations. Sometimes what someone needs isn't the same as what somebody else needs, right? So, empowering your management to make those decisions and give them the kind of the agency that they need to have a healthy department or whatever the org structure is.
I've heard you, Jesse, I don't know if dad mode is the right way to
Yeah.
say it, but like getting on the floor where you've pulled people aside and said, "Hey, I saw you were sending an email. Like, I know that that was during your commute. This is not that important.
Yeah.
Like, you need to make sure that like this stuff, like it's going to be here when you get here. Your safety is important." And like hearing that, like as an employee, it's like, "Oh,
Yep.
thanks. You care about me." Like I have more time than I think that I do. Like when you think about like sports, soccer, like you have more time than you think you do to pass. You don't just need to kick it. Like you have time to figure this out. And I think that those things are really important. And it's really nice to see that it's not, you don't need a meeting. You don't need to set something up and talk about it. You can just go one on one and tell someone, like, hey, I value you as you. Keep it that way. This
Yep.
email can wait. Or like delay delivery. I live on delay delivery emails because it's so easy just to be like, okay, I got to get all this stuff done. But then I can stagger it out where they're going to get it at 8:15. I know they come in at 7:30. This gives them time to start their day. I think that's really important because you think, okay, if I get this off, I'm going to be fine. But what am I, like I'm just passing something over to someone else that
Hmm.
not thinking about how they're handling it. And that, to your point of the responsibility is leadership. If someone sends me an email at 9 p.m., I get stressed out, and then I remember I can't do this. I have most likely 3 kids yelling at me because they refuse to go to bed.
Yeah.
That's the priority. But it's hard to remember that because it's the instant gratification. It's the dopamine. It's, I
Hmm.
did this. I did it well. I'm doing great at work. And then realizing that it's almost like a "what have you done for me lately" situation. Yeah, you responded to an email, big deal, but like
Yeah.
that was a big deal.
No, that's a good call. Sorry, I'm just looking out into the distance.
Okay. I thought, I thought you were like
There's nothing
pointing at
over
something.
there.
I was like,
I'm
what am I
thinking,
supposed to
and
do?
well, it's reflecting on, you talked about people are feeling as connected as ever. But what does that connection actually mean? Right? To me, when I that example you gave with the email, I mean, it is you're allowing or encouraging the habits that you are responding to. I don't that didn't come out
I know
right,
what
but I
you mean.
think you understand what I'm saying.
Hmm.
And it's funny, again, reflecting on the like tools that have worked before. I mean, the phone is a phone. If you need this right now, if you send me an email at 9 p.m. at night, maybe I'm going to pick up the phone and call you. Hey, do you need this right now? Or, that's where you talk about real connectivity. Like, hey, where, what's going on? You and I had a
Yeah.
last year. That was a real, we're going to do this until late at night. That was an important, well, it turned out not to be very important, but
Yeah.
it was at the time, it was it needed to be real time updates. And we all kind of knew that from the beginning. And that was one where I'm not reflecting back, being like, you know what, I probably just shouldn't have responded to Jamie's email. Buzz off. No, we're talking again, millions of dollars for lack of a better term. Maybe not millions, but pretty close.
Well,
Um,
I try to, coach my team into making sure that we treat everyone like humans,
yeah.
and that's important because, logistics it's a big family, and
Hmm.
you hop around from different roles, and you continue to stay in touch with people that you've had relationships with, and treating them right and treating them, the way they should be treated goes much further than getting this load from here to here
Right.
at this cost. And I think the relationship is much, much more important than getting a load delivered.
Sure.
And we have a lot of pressure from different places pushing on us, and you're trying to please multiple masters, right? And what ends up happening is, in that example, we're trying to get stuff across the border, and we have a deadline, and we make decisions that we probably wouldn't have made, and if we weren't getting pushed on from other
Right.
places, right? And like you said, it ended up not really mattering.
I think my reflection on the what ended up happening was that nobody won in that situation,
Nobody.
which is a complete, which I think we landed in a better place. That I think you and I are connected on that, and your team is connected on that. Is that this was just a waste of time for everyone. So that's why I feel comfortable talking about that.
Yeah.
Because it was frustrating. Like, I don't like to have 8 out of 10 loads go well, and you only are remembered as your worst performing load. I learned that early on in my logistics career 19 years ago. But again, talk about that was some things that were out of our control at a very, very high level. Again, we're talking about tariffs across the border. I think those who listen to this podcast can understand what we're talking about. And they ended up not going through. And so our customer, in this case, Jamie, just had moved extra loads in an attempt to avoid costs. That didn't go through. We ended up, not forcing carriers, but finding carriers at an elevated rate to move loads that ended up not going through. We tracked them till late in the evening, if not the following morning. And that didn't mean anything at the end of the day. So at the end of the day, nobody won other than those 2 loads ended up not getting quote unquote fines. And yeah, reflecting on it, we probably all would have rather gone to bed and moved on. But that is what it is. But my point is that like that at that time, it was a quote unquote serious situation, and that's part of the job, right? It was elevated to above what I would consider. We do have a very good 24/7 dispatch here, but this situation elevated above that. So I was fine taking it on. What I'm not fine with is, like you said, Teddy, the dad mode of like, I mean, it's 7:45. If we can't get a follow up at 8:05 to like our load that's most likely running on time while you're driving not on the road, like we probably need to set some parameters with the customer or find a better solution, right? Like we can get updates. We've got people in here at 7:00 in the morning. We can, they have there's all sorts of ways to solve this other than you responding to your email while you're driving.
But that whole situation, actually, when you think about it, led us to this exact podcast today, because going through it and talking about it and being so transparent with each other of, yes, I made this mistake. We maybe made this mistake. Let's figure it out. And then all of a sudden, I'm drinking a cup of coffee with you in your office talking about like, hey, maybe we could actually talk about this a little bit more, because
all roads lead to the Truck Yeah podcast.
Yeah, so,
exactly.
So really, the Truck Yeah's podcast today is Jesse and Jamie having a therapy session.
Yeah, right. Yeah, reflecting on the tariff situation. Okay, back to the topics at hand. So we kind of touched on it, like logistics being behind the scenes and the transparency affecting the mental and emotional experience of customers. That's interesting. But, talk about some of the brands. You mentioned L brands or maybe other athletic and wellness brands about mindfulness and well-being. Like, how do you see that they live that within their, obviously the customers that they're servicing and then within their employees?
Yeah, I think most companies that have a push for mental wellness, and that's kind of built into their culture,
Yeah.
do a really good job of it, promoting it, whether it's through social media, which can, we've already talked about that, how that could be evil, but I think it has to be built within the structure of their internal culture so that it can be genuine and flow out and impact relations with vendors, but also the way that we talk to our guests in the store, through our guest education center, and I think all brands, at least the ones that I'm thinking about that talk about mental health openly, I think they do a really good job. I think they do a job of whether it's supporting nonprofits, whether it's supporting events that foster mental health. But ultimately, it really boils down to what we do with it, and it's more of like a one-on-one. We can have big events, and I think people get lost in big events,
Yeah.
and they might make you feel good for a minute. Gone to a concert, gone to a big marathon that you had your heart set on running, but that fades away, right?
Hmm.
And unless you have something that sticks with you, that's inside of you, those other things can fall flat. And I have a Bible study group that we meet on Saturday mornings, and you know ultimately, we talk about spirituality a lot, right? So counselors will shy away from that, but I've heard some things where counselors are starting to talk about people's spirituality in a way that, as a country, we've kind of like drifted away from it, and we've seen the results of that with our mental health decline has been pretty bad. If you put your self value and self worth in the material world, right, that stuff can go away really quickly.
Hmm.
When we lost Theron, this will sound weird, but my faith grew because without my faith, I don't know that I'd be here today. Losing Theron was such a horrific thing to have to go through. If I didn't have my faith, I don't know how I would be able to continue. And that's my way of thinking. Yeah, you know, material stuff, our relationships, even though I think relationships are super important, they're, worldly, right? And they can go away. Theron is gone, so my relationship with him, I can't rely on that to fuel or make my self worth. My self worth has to be, something more than this world. So
Hmm.
I know you probably didn't expect to go down that path, but
I'm glad you did though, because I think that's the point of being in a community and being able to communicate is you should be allowed to say what you want to say, whether anyone else agrees with it or not. And I think being able to have those experiences and opinions helps people make their own opinions and grow as individuals and understand and respect different situations. And I think we've gotten away from that because it's like everything has to be so politically correct, which I'm not gonna lie, I don't even really know if I know what that means. If it's like I'm not allowed to say something that could offend someone else, or if there's, like a certain air you need to have in each situation. But like it's just nice to be able to say what you want to say and have someone say, "Oh, I that's great to hear. That's great to know. I agree, but it's this for me." And just have a conversation where it's like, I'm not trying to tell you one way or another, but you have something you relate to. Guess what? I do too. Like this is how it can go. It's just a conversation. And I mean, we talk about it in all our training programs here as far as it's a debate. A successful debate when you are talking to someone is, I understand where you're coming from when you say this, and I agree. However, this is what I know. And then all of a sudden we have dialogue
yeah.
and, a path.
Yeah, and I think I don't know if I answered your question, but I think there are structures within our lives that help facilitate mental health, whether it's the companies we work for, the companies that we love and we pay attention to, and our communities, whether that is groups that you're with. I know when my kids were growing up, it was like, we were the soccer family, right?
Yeah.
And then, track and field family. So you hang around with all those groups of people that you have a lot of common with. And you know, faith family is the same way. But like our community, I live in Granville, Ohio, and what I'm trying to do with Thrive for Theron Foundation is to make Granville, Ohio stronger. And then if you think about the way the world works, people that you're interacting with and maybe you help them, then they go out and help someone else and it spreads organically. And the counselor that we're working with, the way that he looks at it is if we can give more people in the community these tools, it's no different than teaching someone CPR. So if they have, CPR, Heimlich, well, now they also can maybe identify when someone's struggling and know what to do when someone's struggling. Or even better, prevention is much easier than fixing, right? So, you know, you know, we have our carriers do PMs on their truck, right? The pre and the post, and keeping the maintenance up. Well, it's the same with mental health.
Yeah.
You have to work on it daily. You have to try to prevent, or at least be prepared for things that can go wrong. And I think that that comes down to individual interactions, and then those individual interactions become group interactions, and then we just start having a much stronger community, and that's what we're shooting for.
Is it fair to say that I keep in my mind this brave talks, right? And Teddy made a great point of calling out the brave is intentional. Not only the practice of those pre and post maintenance, did you have to practice having those types of talks with people, right? Like I can't imagine you mentioned in May of 2022, you didn't the next day you didn't come out and all right, let's get on a bunch of podcasts, right? I mean, it was you. I assume you practiced on that, and then other people have to practice on that. So I think that's an important factor too. Is that it's not going to be perfect every. I mean, it's not going to be perfect anytime. But I think as a manager, these conversations, the more you have them, the more quote unquote comfortable you feel. I guess, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, the more comfortable you feel, and the more comfortable they feel.
Yeah.
That is, I mean, it's a perfect example of having the brave talks with your kids. The more that you're willing to bring up a topic that is either taboo or they're not comfortable with, it it kind of softens it, and it makes it something that when if if they do start having feelings, either anxiety or there's a myriad of different issues with mental health. If they've heard those words, they're less scary, right? And they know what they your kids start knowing what they mean, and how they potentially feel. And hopefully when they start, well, hopefully they never feel anxiety and isolation and suicidal ideation, but at least talking about it lets them recognize what it looks like. And another analogy our counselor used was like, imagine a horror movie, and the monster, if you don't know what the monster looks like, and you don't know how it attacks, or it's how it manifests,
Yeah.
then the movie can then spring it on you, and it's you're gasping. But if at the beginning of that horror movie you get to see the monster, and you get to see all its weapons, and you get to see the way that it worked, it's not so scary, right? So it's no different than these hard topics. We can talk about them early with our kids. We can let them know how they manifest, what they feel like. Then they become less and less scary. And then maybe, the kids will start coming to you saying, hey, my friend is struggling, or, there's different ways of helping others. You can start off helping your family, and then it maybe evolves into helping, their families,
Yeah.
their friends and families. So
The snowball effect. I like
Mhm.
that.
It's like I don't know if I'm saying this right, but like the difference between prescribing and diagnosing. Like if you don't, like, I mean, going through, having kids, like I didn't know like anything. And I feel like I needed someone there to be like, no, this is what she said. This is what she wants. Like when you go through those things and it's, people say, oh, you're fine. Just put a Band-Aid on it. No, you need to clean it, and then you need ointment, and then this is what you have. And I think that that's important, because if you don't know the questions to ask, you're just going to follow through with whatever social. I'm going to go buy creatine and colostrum, and that's what I'm going to live on now. Like I don't know what they are, but I need to know what I have before I decide what supplement to take.
Great. Creatine's good. You
Is
should
it?
take
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll order it shortly.
Well, we've taken up quite a bit of time, so we're going to kind of end it. Anything in particular you'd like to share? Kind of a final parting thought for us.
Yeah, I think my final thought would be that I'm appreciative that we're talking and having this conversation. And even though the podcaster or the people listening to the podcast maybe don't know me, please use my story of our loss of Theron, who was by all measures just your normal average kid having a great life, and then he went through some rough patches. He was freshman year at Mount Vernon. His classes were a little bit tougher than he thought they were going to be, so he was struggling a little bit there. He was running track, and his season, even though he was setting PRs, he wasn't having the season he wanted to have. And he had a relationship that he had been in for 8 to 10 months, and and they were breaking up. And the day that he died was the final day when they broke up. They exchanged their sweatshirts
Mhm.
and whatever. So a use my story as a way to have brave conversations with your kids, and b don't underestimate the little things an adult can handle piled up on a kid, because the way that they see the world is a lot different than the way we do. We know we can handle these things. We know that these problems aren't the end of the world. Well, for Theron, that they built up in a way that they were the end of his world. So
Yeah.
just be cognizant of our youth and how big this world is and how scary it is. And it can truly be monstrous, and they don't know what to look for. They don't know how to handle it. So you know, let's do our jobs. And whether it's your own kids or your nephews, your grandkids, whatever, just, be good to them.
That's awesome.
It is.
Thank you for sharing with us, Teddy. Thanks for walking us through this episode. Jamie,
Thank you.
thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it. We'll see everybody on the next time on the Truck Yeah podcast.